Serious. Employers. What's the most insane complaint you've had about an employee that turned out to be completely true? Story 1. I used to manage a small electronics store. One afternoon, a customer came in furious, claiming one of our employees was smuggling merchandise out of the store in his pants. I thought it was just a wild accusation from an angry customer who didn't get a refund, but she insisted she had seen him shove multiple boxed phone chargers down the front of his sweatpants before leaving for his break. I checked the security cameras, and sure enough, there he was, casually stuffing products into his waistband and walking out like nothing happened. We confronted him the next morning, and he actually denied it, until I put the footage on loop on the break room TV. He quietly took off his name tag, set it on the counter, and walked out without a word. Story 2. A client once called me saying our cleaner had been living in their office at night. I assumed they meant the cleaner stayed late or took long breaks, so I told them I'd look into it. No, the guy had actually moved into a storage closet. He had an air mattress, a small desk fan, a box of cereal, and even a laptop set up on the floor. He would finish cleaning, lock the building from the inside, and sleep there until his morning shift at another job. Apparently, he'd been doing it for over 2 months without anyone noticing, except for the client who caught him microwaving breakfast in their break room at 6 a.m. The part that shocked me most? He said he preferred living there because it was quieter than home. Story 3. One of my employees was accused by a coworker of licking every donut in the box before putting it in the break room. It sounded like a petty revenge rumor until multiple people complained their donuts were weirdly sticky. I finally decided to set up a camera. The next morning, I watched in disbelief as he walked in with a fresh box, opened the lid, leaned down, and ran his tongue across every single one before arranging them neatly. When I asked him why, he said it was to make sure no one took more than one. I still don't know what logic he thought that made sense under. Story 4. I got an email from HR saying a customer had complained that our delivery driver was stopping in the middle of his route to play in a park fountain, in his uniform. At first, I thought it was some confused case of mistaken identity. Then another customer sent us a selfie they had taken with him, shirtless, drenched, holding a popsicle, with our delivery truck in the background. The timestamp matched when he was supposed to be delivering to them. And turns out, he had a whole routine. He'd hit the park around noon every sunny day, cool off in the fountain, and then finish his route dripping wet. His defense? The packages didn't get wet. Story 5. We had an anonymous complaint that one of our accountants was using company resources to run a goat rental business. Everyone laughed at the absurdity of it, until we checked his computer. Sure enough, he had been using his work email, printer, and even our company's official PayPal account to coordinate goat therapy sessions for birthday parties, corporate events, and weddings. He'd park a trailer full of goats in the office lot during lunch breaks. When confronted, he proudly showed us a photo album of all the happy customers. And yes, every single picture had a goat in it. Story 6. I once had a complaint from a hotel guest saying our night receptionist was charging people to pet a raccoon in the lobby. I assumed it was a bad joke, but the guest was dead serious. I checked the cameras, and sure enough, there's our receptionist sitting behind the counter with a raccoon on a leash, letting people feed it crackers for $5 a pop. He had made a little cardboard sign that said, "Midnight Raccoon Experience, $5, and was keeping the cash in the register. When I asked him why on earth he thought that was okay, he said the raccoon was his emotional support animal, and he figured it could earn its keep. Story 7. An employee at our warehouse was accused by a coworker of intentionally mixing up shipments so customers would get random items. I thought it was sabotage gossip until I checked the records and noticed the same employee processed several orders where customers who bought, say, lawn chairs received inflatable flamingos instead. Reviewing security footage revealed him deliberately swapping boxes, grinning at the camera, and even writing, "Enjoy," inside the packages. When confronted, he said he wanted to spread unexpected joy and compared it to a real-life mystery box subscription. Story 8. We got a furious email from a parent claiming one of our theme park ride operators was giving kids fake treasure maps and sending them to a restricted area. It sounded absurd, but the maps were real. The employee had been drawing them by hand during slow hours and giving them to kids with promises of secret pirate loot. The X on the map led them to a locked maintenance shed where security had to stop them. His explanation? He thought it would make the park feel more magical. The parents didn't exactly see it that way. Story 9. A woman once called to complain that our IT guy was hosting live lizard races in the break room. I thought she was exaggerating. Maybe she saw him with a pet reptile. Nope. He had built an elaborate racetrack out of cardboard and duct tape, complete with numbered lanes, betting slips, and a leaderboard. The races happened every Friday at lunch, and half the office knew about it. Employees were putting actual money on the races, and he'd live stream them to a private Facebook group. We shut it down immediately, but he was still upset because Larry the Gecko was on a winning streak. Story 10. I once had a tenant complain that the property's janitor was farming mushrooms in the laundry room. It sounded like a weird way to say, "It smells musty." But the smell was from actual trays of mushrooms growing behind the dryers. He had installed heat lamps, humidity gauges, and labeled each tray with species names. He claimed they were gourmet culinary mushrooms and planned to sell them to local restaurants. When I explained this was wildly inappropriate and probably illegal in a communal laundry, he seemed more hurt than guilty. Said he thought people would be happy to have fresh ingredients in the building. Story 11. We had a complaint from a customer who said our florist delivery driver was delivering flowers while dressed as a giant bee. I figured it was some kind of festival misunderstanding, but no. He'd purchased a full bee costume online and decided to make it his signature look. The thing is, he didn't tell anyone at the company, and customers were confused or creeped out when a 6'3" bee knocked on their door holding roses. He even had a buzz sound effect playing from his phone. He said it was great branding and thought people would remember the bee guy forever. We had to explain that not all publicity is good publicity. Story 12. A client called saying our graphic designer was drawing them into inappropriate cartoons. I assumed they meant caricatures or light-hearted doodles. It was not that. When we checked his work computer, we found an entire sketchbook of clients reimagined as fantasy characters, knights, vampires, mermaids, but some were in very suggestive poses. He claimed it was just artistic practice and that he was making them look cool. The problem? Some clients saw the drawings because he left them as layers in the files he sent, and one particularly furious customer called HR, demanding we stop making them into half-naked wizards. Story 13. One of our hotel guests complained that a maintenance worker was teaching her child knife throwing in the courtyard. I was sure it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he showed them how to toss a butter knife into the grass or something harmless. Nope. He had set up a wooden target, pulled out throwing knives from his backpack, and was letting the kid practice hitting the bullseye. He claimed it was a valuable life skill and that kids need to know how to handle blades safely. The parent was horrified. Security confiscated the knives, and we had to update our safety training because apparently no knife throwing wasn't an explicit rule before. Story 14. We received multiple emails about a barista who was predicting customers' orders before they spoke. At first, I thought it was just a compliment to his memory skills, but then a customer claimed he correctly predicted their entire week's worth of orders in advance. Turns out he'd been secretly keeping a handwritten log of every regular's drinks, times, and even extra habits. Usually orders muffin if raining. Always adds extra shot after 2 p.m. When I asked him why, he said he wanted to make the cafe feel like a psychic's coffee shop. Customers were split between being impressed and very, very creeped out. Story 15. A vendor once reported that one of our warehouse workers was training pigeons in the loading dock. It sounded absurd, but sure enough, there was a small flock hanging around every day. He'd built tiny perches out of scrap wood and was hand-feeding them seeds. He even had a clicker to train them to pick up small bolts and washers. His goal? To create a pigeon delivery squad for small parts within the facility. He swore it was going to revolutionize warehouse logistics. We had to shut it down, not because it wasn't working, but because the bird started stealing shiny tools from other vendors' trucks. Story 16. A customer once complained that our car mechanic had returned their vehicle with a hamster living in it. I thought they meant a mouse or some pest got in, but nope. It was an actual pet hamster in a small cage, placed on the passenger seat with a sticky note that read, "He likes sunflower seeds." When we asked the mechanic what on earth was going on, he said he found the hamster hiding under the glove box while working and assumed it belonged to the customer. Except the customer had never owned a hamster. To this day, no one knows where it came from. Story 17. We got an email from a wedding party saying our event coordinator arrived in full medieval armor and insisted on being addressed as Sir Gareth. I was certain it was a prank, but photos confirmed it. Breastplate, chainmail, helmet, sword, blunted, the works. He apparently decided the wedding's castle theme needed authenticity and introduced himself to guests with mock duels. Some people loved it, but the bride was furious because he was louder than the actual ceremony. His defense? They said make it magical. He didn't understand why that didn't mean storming the dance floor with a battle cry. Story 18. One of our retail employees was accused of singing every price out loud in opera style while restocking shelves. I figured it was exaggeration until I visited the store and heard it myself. He'd belt out $4.99 in dramatic tenor, followed by a flourish. Customers alternated between laughing and being startled. Apparently, he'd been doing it for months, thinking it was good entertainment. Sales in his aisle did go up, but mostly because people came to watch the performance, not to buy. Story 19. A neighbor called our office to say that our landscaping employee was painting rocks to look like watermelons and hiding them in bushes. It sounded too bizarre to be true, until we visited the site and found over 20 large, smooth stones, painted green with pink interiors and little black dots. When we asked why, he said it was a fun surprise for kids walking by and part of nature's whimsy. Unfortunately, several dogs tried to bite the fake melons, and one person nearly broke a tooth, so we had to end the art project. Story 20. We once had a complaint that one of our taxi drivers was offering free rides in exchange for magic tricks. My first thought was that it was some kind of marketing gimmick, but it wasn't official. He'd just gotten really into sleight-of-hand magic and would tell passengers their fare was waived if they let him perform 3 tricks during the ride. He kept a deck of cards, coins, and even a collapsible top hat in the glove box. Most people found it charming, but one passenger reported him after he made their watch disappear and then accidentally dropped it into the AC vent. Story 21. We had a hotel guest complain that one of our bellboys delivered their luggage on a skateboard. At first, I thought it was just a quirky choice of transport, but then the guest clarified. He didn't push the skateboard, he rode it, holding the suitcase between his knees, weaving through the lobby like he was in a skate park. Security footage showed him doing spins and jumps on the marble floor while balancing the bag. He said it saved time and looked cooler than the luggage cart. We disagreed. Story 22. A parent once called to say our summer camp counselor was teaching kids how to start a campfire in the parking lot. I assumed it was a misunderstanding, but when I arrived, there were 10 kids huddled around a small, smoldering pile of twigs on asphalt, while the counselor explained urban survival skills. His logic? You never know when you'll need to cook in a city. Thankfully, a staff member with a fire extinguisher ended the lesson before it got out of hand. Story 23. We got an angry call from a grocery store customer claiming one of our employees was hiding in the cereal aisle wearing a gorilla suit. I didn't believe it until a second person sent in a blurry phone photo of exactly that. Turns out, he'd bought the costume for Halloween and decided to spice up slow shifts by jumping out at co-workers and regular customers. His defense was that everyone loves surprises, which may have been true except for the elderly man who nearly fell into a display of canned beans. Story 24. A regular complained that our cafe's dishwasher brought a chicken to work. Not fried chicken, a live chicken. He had it in a small harness and tied it to the sink leg so it could watch him work. He said it was his emotional support chicken, and it calmed him down during stressful shifts. Management had to step in after the chicken wandered into the kitchen, causing 3 customers to complain about feathers in the air. He was genuinely shocked we didn't allow poultry in food prep areas. Story 25. One time, a client accused our office intern of wearing scuba gear to a meeting. Sure enough, when I walked in, there he was, full wetsuit, mask on top of his head, and flippers still on his feet. He said he was getting into character for a marine biology project we were working on, despite the fact we're an accounting firm. He insisted it was commitment to the theme, but it mostly resulted in him knocking over a coffee pot with his flippers and tripping over the conference room chair. Story 26. We once had a complaint from a library patron saying one of our librarians was issuing library cards to pets. I thought they were joking, but when I asked the librarian, she proudly pulled out a stack of cards, one for a golden retriever named Max, a parrot named Captain, and even a turtle called Shelley. She had taken their paw or claw prints as signatures and kept them on file. When I asked why, she said she wanted to encourage owners to read aloud to their animals. Cute, but wildly against policy. Story 27. At a tech company I worked for, a client complained that our software engineer had fallen asleep under their desk during a meeting. It sounded like an exaggeration until the client sent a photo. There he was, curled up in a sleeping bag with noise-canceling headphones on, mid-meeting. Turns out, he'd been doing it for months whenever he didn't feel like participating in discussions. He said it helped him absorb information subconsciously. We explained that's not how meetings work. Story 28. A park visitor once reported that one of our groundskeepers was talking to the squirrels like they were his co-workers. I thought maybe they just meant he liked animals, but when I checked, he had actually made laminated name tags for Jeff, Marcy, and Nutmeg, and held what he called morning briefings where he'd toss them peanuts while assigning tasks. His reasoning? It boosts morale, theirs and mine. The squirrels did seem unusually friendly, but management drew the line when he asked for them to be added to the payroll system. Story 29. A restaurant customer complained that their waiter served drinks from a magician's hat. I figured maybe it was a themed night, but no. The waiter had decided to make a personal signature move. He'd mix cocktails in the shaker, pour them into clean plastic bags inside a top hat, then dramatically pull the drinks out for customers. Some loved it. But one person got a drink that tasted faintly of fabric softener from where the hat had been stored. That ended the trick for good. Story 30. We had an office neighbor call us saying our delivery driver was practicing archery on company time. I assumed they meant at a range after work, but no. He was setting up cardboard boxes as targets in the loading dock and firing arrows between deliveries. He even had a little scoreboard tracking his accuracy. His defense? I never missed a delivery, and I never missed the target. We told him that wasn't the point, and that the pointy part was exactly the problem. Story 31. We had a complaint from a museum visitor saying one of our security guards was posing in every selfie people took. I assumed they meant photobombing occasionally, but no. He had a system. Anytime someone raised a phone for a selfie, he'd quickly appear in the background, striking dramatic poses, arms crossed, finger guns, superhero stances. He even kept a small prop mustache in his pocket for variety. The visitor who complained said they couldn't get a single family picture without him in it. His defense? I'm enhancing the visitor experience. Story 32. A hotel guest once told me our concierge offered to sell them a haunted mirror. I thought maybe the guest misunderstood some kind of antique decor story, but when I asked the concierge, he cheerfully confirmed it. He'd bought the mirror at a flea market, decided it had a dark aura, and started offering it to brave souls for $100. He even had a whole backstory about a Victorian woman trapped inside. The guest wasn't amused, especially when the concierge offered to throw in a sage bundle for free. Story 33. We got an email from a parent saying our ice cream shop employee was giving kids cones with mystery flavors they didn't order. I thought maybe it was a mistake during a rush, but he admitted he was intentionally swapping flavors for fun. He'd give chocolate lovers bubblegum, vanilla fans green tea, and so on, and then watch their reactions. His reasoning? Kids should try new things. Parents were furious, especially when one child with a mild allergy got pistachio instead of strawberry. Story 34. At a community pool, a member complained that our lifeguard was delivering dramatic weather forecasts over the PA system. I went to check, and sure enough, every hour he'd grab the mic and announce, "A storm of cannonballs is approaching," or "Expect heavy splashing in the shallow end." He had even made a fake weather map with pool zones labeled like regions. Some swimmers loved it, but one parent called it confusing and unprofessional after their kid thought there was an actual storm coming. Story 35. We once had a cafe regular complain that our barista was carving portraits into toast. I assumed they meant latte art, but it was literal bread. The barista would use a small heated tool to burn images into the toast surface before serving it. He'd done celebrities, pets, even a couple's wedding photo from their phone. People found it fascinating, but it made orders take forever and left the whole cafe smelling faintly of burnt bread. When told to stop, he said, "You're killing the Mona Lisa of breakfast." Story 36. A customer once complained that our hardware store cashier was wearing night vision goggles while scanning items. I thought it had to be a joke, but when I checked the cameras, there he was. Big green glowing lenses on his head, scanning barcodes like he was on a covert mission. He said the store lighting hurt his eyes and night vision goggles made it more fun. The problem? He kept missing barcodes and ringing up the wrong items because the goggles distorted the scanner beam. Story 37. A theme park guest reported that one of our ride attendants was telling everyone the ride was cursed. I assumed it was just dramatic theming, but he was genuinely warning people that the last 3 who sat in row 5 had terrible luck afterward. Guests were lining up specifically to avoid that seat, which slowed everything down. When we confronted him, he said he was just adding suspense. We had to stop him when a family demanded a refund after their kid burst into tears over the curse. Story 38. A library patron once told us an employee was slipping fortunes into random books. I thought it sounded harmless, until I opened one and found a note that read, "You will never finish this book." Some were funny, but others were cryptic or unsettling, like, "The last page is not the end." The employee thought it was interactive literature and claimed readers loved the mystery. Management disagreed after a patron complained that the notes were messing with their head. Story 39. We had a bakery customer claim that one of our decorators was icing cakes with conspiracy theories. That made no sense until I saw it. Neat cursive frosting spelling out, "The moon landing was fake" on a birthday cake. He had a whole rotation. "Birds aren't real. Area 51 knows," and so on. He'd only do it for cakes that didn't have a requested message, thinking it was free decoration. People were equal parts amused and offended, But one grandma was furious her grandson's plain cake said, "Trust no one." Story 40. An office neighbor complained that our receptionist was keeping bees in the supply closet. At first, I thought they meant it metaphorically, like she was always busy. Nope. She had a small glass observation hive with about 100 bees buzzing away next to the copier. She said she was helping the environment and planned to harvest honey for the office. Unfortunately, someone allergic found out the hard way, and we had to relocate the bees to a farm. Story 41. We had a hotel guest complain that our bartender was serving drinks with riddles instead of receipts. Sure enough, instead of a paper receipt, he'd hand customers a small folded card with a handwritten riddle. If they solved it, they'd get a free shot. If not, they had to tip an extra $1. Some thought it was fun, but others just wanted to pay and leave. One man got so frustrated he left without paying at all. The bartender's defense? I'm giving them a mental cocktail, too. Story 42. A farmer's market customer reported that our produce vendor was naming every fruit individually. I figured it meant labeling the type, but no. Each apple, banana, and orange had a tiny sticker with a personal name. Greg, Susan, Bobby the banana. He'd even introduced them like pets. This is Charlotte the cherry. Please be gentle. While most people laughed, one parent complained after their kid cried when they had to eat Timmy the tomato. Story 43. A bank client once told us a teller was handing out fortunes from tea leaves. I thought maybe they were joking, but she had been bringing her own teacup and loose leaves to work, pouring hot water during slow times, then reading customer futures before their transactions. She'd say things like, "I see a big purchase in your near future," or "Beware of a bill next month." Harmless in her mind, but one customer claimed she jinxed their mortgage approval. Story 44. We got a complaint from a theme park visitor that one of our gift shop clerks was wrapping purchases like they were ancient artifacts. When I checked, I saw her meticulously wrapping mugs and keychains in layers of bubble wrap, twine, and handwritten discovery notes, all while narrating like an archaeologist. It took forever, and lines backed up out the door. She said it was immersive storytelling, but most guests just wanted their stuff in a bag. Story 45. A coffee shop customer said their barista slid their drink down the counter like a bartender in an old Western. We thought it was a harmless flourish until we realized he was doing it for every order, no matter the drink size. Lattes, cappuccinos, even iced coffees, all sent skating down the counter. It worked. About 80% of the time. The other 20% ended with drinks spilling into customers' laps. His justification? I'm bringing style to the service industry. Story 46. A customer at our electronics store complained that one of our techs only spoke in movie quotes. I thought maybe they meant he joked around occasionally. But no, he had committed to it fully. Ask about a phone repair, and he'd say, "I can fix this. I have a very particular set of skills." Inquire about a warranty, and you'd get, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Some people found it hilarious, but others left frustrated when he couldn't break character long enough to give a straightforward answer. Story 47. At a zoo, a visitor reported that one of our gift shop workers was trading merchandise for animal facts. Instead of ringing up souvenirs, he'd tell customers they had to earn them by answering trivia about the animals, or listen to him give a lecture before he'd hand them over. He claimed it made the purchase more meaningful. Some guests liked it, but one parent complained after it took 15 minutes to buy a stuffed giraffe because he insisted on explaining giraffe neck anatomy first. Story 48. A co-working space member told us our receptionist was holding motivational speeches in the lobby. At first, I assumed it was small talk, but she had set up a little podium near the coffee station and would give 5-minute pep talks every morning, complete with applause. Sound effects on her phone. Topics ranged from conquering Monday to email like a champion. People who were late for meetings weren't amused when she tried to keep them in the audience. Story 49. One of our fast food customers complained that their cashier took their order entirely in pirate voice. The employee didn't just throw in a few R-matey lines. He committed 100%. The register was the treasure chest, the fries were golden plunder, and the milkshakes were sea foam. The problem came when he handed someone their change and yelled, "Now walk the plank," to a customer who didn't get the joke. Story 50. We once had a complaint that our office janitor was building a castle in the storage room. I thought maybe he was stacking boxes, but he had actually used cardboard, duct tape, and old furniture to make a multi-room fort, complete with flags and no trespassing signs. He'd been eating lunch inside it every day and invited a few employees for castle tours. It wasn't unsafe, but HR shut it down when deliveries couldn't fit through the hallway because of the castle's drawbridge. Story 51. A grocery store customer complained that one of our cashiers wore a cape and announced every item like it was an award winner. At first, I thought it was just a joke once or twice, but nope. He'd grab the intercom mic and say things like, "chips," while holding the bag above his head. Some customers laughed, but others were irritated when their quick shopping trip turned into a 5-minute theatrical production for each order. Story 52. A hotel guest told us our housekeeping staff left origami animals all over the room. I assumed it was just towel swans, but when we checked, there were over 30 folded creations scattered everywhere, penguins on the nightstand, giraffes on the dresser, a giant dragon on the bed. It was impressive, but also kind of overwhelming, especially when the guest opened their suitcase to find tiny paper frogs tucked into their clothes. The housekeeper said she was making the stay memorable, but the guest said it felt like being followed by an army of paper creatures. Story 53. A coffee shop regular reported that one of our baristas was adding personalized poems to every cup sleeve. At first, it seemed like a sweet gesture, but then customers started noticing the poems were oddly specific, referencing their clothing, mood, or even overheard conversations. One woman swore her poem mentioned the exact argument she'd had on the phone outside. The barista said it was just observational poetry, but some people found it too personal to be charming. Story 54. We had a theme park visitor complain that our train ride conductor narrated the journey like a crime scene investigation. Instead of the usual fun facts, he'd say things like, "On your left is where the victim was last seen, and on your right the suspicious footprints lead into the woods." Kids were alternately fascinated and terrified, and parents weren't thrilled about explaining why a family ride sounded like a murder podcast. The conductor argued it made the trip more thrilling. Story 55. A fast food customer complained that the drive-thru attendant handed them their order through a fishing net. I didn't believe it until another customer sent a video. The employee lowering a small net with burgers and fries, grinning the whole time. He said it was more hygienic and felt like deep-sea treasure retrieval. The problem was that drinks tipped over half the time, and people weren't amused when their milkshake came back covered in fry salt. Story 56. A bookstore customer complained that one of our clerks whispered plot spoilers to people buying books. I thought they meant he accidentally gave away small details. But no, he would lean in as customers checked out and murmur things like, "The villain dies in the end," or "the couple doesn't end up together." He said it was a social experiment to see if people still read the book. Unsurprisingly, people were furious, and one woman returned 3 novels unopened because he already told me the ending. Story 57. A gym member told us a personal trainer was holding medieval-style duels on the basketball court. I assumed it was just sparring with foam sticks, but when I checked, he had full padded armor, plastic swords, and was shouting challenges like, "Defend your honor." Members had to walk around them to get to the treadmills. He insisted it was functional combat cardio and claimed his nights burned more calories than anyone else in the building. Story 58. A guest at our bed and breakfast complained that the chef only served meals shaped like famous landmarks. At first, I thought they meant cute pancake shapes, but this man had turned breakfast into an architectural art show. Eiffel Tower waffles, Colosseum omelets, even a Sydney Opera House fruit platter. It was impressive. But meals took forever, and one guest who just wanted scrambled eggs got very impatient while their plate was under construction. Story 59. We had a complaint from a corporate client saying our AV technician added sound effects to all the PowerPoint slides. I thought it might be an accident, but during a presentation, every slide transition had its own noise. Sword swipes, lasers, dramatic drum rolls. Graphs zoomed in with whoosh sounds, and bullet points appeared with cartoon bowings. The client was mortified in front of their investors. The tech defended himself by saying it kept the audience engaged. Story 60. A movie theater customer claimed our ticket taker was performing full Shakespeare monologues before letting people in. I figured it was an exaggeration, but sure enough, he had memorized entire scenes from Hamlet and Macbeth and would recite them in the lobby before scanning tickets. Some people clapped. Others just wanted to watch their movie without a 3-minute dramatic intro. He told us he was bringing high culture to the masses, but the lines to enter were getting ridiculous. Story 61. A diner customer complained that our waiter kept doing magic tricks with the silverware instead of taking orders. I thought maybe he just pulled one coin trick, but apparently he'd spend several minutes bending forks, making spoons disappear, and balancing knives in bizarre ways before even writing anything down. Customers who were in a hurry hated it. His excuse? They'll remember the magic longer than the food. Unfortunately, they also remembered waiting 20 minutes for their coffee. Story 62. We had a museum visitor say our tour guide was replacing historical dates with movie release years. I assumed they meant he made pop culture comparisons, but he literally said things like, "The Civil War ended in the same year Alice in Wonderland hit theaters." He replaced every fact with a movie reference. The Great Fire of London happened 2 years before Jaws would have been filmed, if cameras existed. It was funny for about 5 minutes. Then people just wanted the real information. Story 63. A theme park guest told us a costumed character was holding mock job interviews with kids. When we checked, the actor dressed as a friendly bear had set up a little desk and was asking children, "Why should I hire you for my honey company?" while taking fake notes. Some kids loved it, but parents complained when their shy kids were grilled on teamwork skills and problem solving. The actor thought it was educational role play. Story 64. A fast food customer said their cashier was using a puppet to take orders. Sure enough, instead of speaking directly, the employee had a small frog puppet on their hand that talked to customers, asking about fries and drinks. He'd nod seriously at the puppet as if getting approval before entering anything in the register. Kids were entertained, but the lunch rush moved at a snail's pace because every order became a mini puppet show. Story 65. A hotel guest complained that the front desk clerk kept offering to translate their dreams. The guest thought it was part of some spa service, but no. The clerk just genuinely believed he could interpret dreams. When guests mentioned anything about sleeping well or having strange dreams, he'd grab a notepad and start analyzing symbols. One woman just wanted a late checkout, but ended up in a 15-minute discussion about what her dream rabbit meant for her financial future. Story 66. A cafe customer complained that their barista was painting portraits of customers while they waited for coffee. At first, I thought it was just a fun doodle, but no. She had an actual easel set up near the counter and would start sketching whoever ordered next. The portraits were surprisingly good, but the drinks would sit on the counter getting cold while she added details. Some customers loved it, but others found it uncomfortable to be stared at in silence for 5 minutes. Story 67. A corporate client told us one of our consultants only communicated in rhymes during meetings. I thought it was a one-time joke, but apparently he'd deliver entire project updates in sing-song couplets. The figures are steady, the plan is quite ready. But delay just a day, and the market's unsteady. It amused some people, but others were annoyed when they had to decode what he was actually saying. Story 68. We had a retail customer claim one of our clerks followed them around, narrating their shopping trip like a nature documentary. Sure enough, the employee would quietly say things like, "Here, we see the shopper in their natural habitat, approaching the clearance rack with caution." He thought it was harmless entertainment, but the customer said it felt like being stalked by David Attenborough. Story 69. A spa guest reported that their masseuse kept quoting motivational speeches during the massage. Instead of relaxing music and silence, they got, "You are strong. You are powerful. You can achieve anything you set your mind to," between every muscle press. The masseuse said they wanted clients to leave not just relaxed, but inspired. The guest said they left with a tense back and a headache. Story 70. A pet store customer said one of our employees was holding fake adoption interviews for the fish. I checked the security footage, and there he was, sitting customers down and asking, "Do you have a suitable home for Mr. Bubbles? How many hours a day will you spend with him?" He'd refused to sell certain fish if the answers didn't meet his standards. Management had to step in after a man left yelling because he'd been rejected for a goldfish. Story 71. A supermarket shopper complained that one of our baggers was rating customers' groceries out loud. At first, I thought it meant small compliments, but the employee had turned it into a full commentary. Strong choice with the avocados, bold move on the frozen pizza, questionable on the canned soup. He even gave an overall shopping score at the end. Some customers laughed, but others felt judged when they got a 6 out of 10. Too much soda. Story 72. We had a library patron claim one of our staff hid riddles inside random books. It sounded harmless, but when we checked, the riddles were written on index cards stuffed in the middle of novels, nonfiction, and even children's books. The twist? If you solved the riddle, it told you where to find a prize hidden somewhere in the library. The staff member thought it was interactive fun, but the prizes were just more riddles, and patrons were getting frustrated spending hours hunting for nothing. Story 73. A theme park visitor said our caricature artist was turning everyone into superheroes without asking. Even if someone wanted a regular family drawing, he'd add capes, masks, and lightning bolts. Babies became mini Hulks, grandparents got laser eyes, and pets wore battle armor. While most people thought it was hilarious, one couple was annoyed their romantic portrait turned into Batman and Catwoman on a roller coaster. Story 74. A hotel guest complained that the bellhop gave them a ghost tour of the building before taking them to their room. The guest was just tired and wanted to check in, but instead, they got a 20-minute walk through hallways, while the bellhop whispered stories about the woman in white and the man who knocks. He said he was adding atmosphere to the historic hotel, but several guests refused to sleep on floors he mentioned in the stories. Story 75. We had a call center customer report that their representative kept speaking like a sports commentator. When I listened to the call, the rep opened with, "And we're off to a strong start here in billing disputes," and narrated the entire process with fake crowd cheers in the background. It was funny, but the call took twice as long because he kept adding play-by-play commentary after every step. His excuse? "I'm keeping customers entertained during the boring parts." Story 76. A restaurant customer complained that their waiter was sculpting mashed potatoes into famous landmarks before serving them. I assumed it was an exaggeration, but no, he was taking the time to mold potatoes into mini Eiffel Towers, pyramids, and even the Statue of Liberty. While creative, it delayed orders and made some plates go cold. His defense? "People take pictures of food now. I'm just making it worth photographing." Story 77. We had a retail shopper say an employee followed them around playing dramatic violin music. I thought it was some kind of Valentine's Day promotion, but apparently the employee brought their own violin to work and trailed certain customers, playing a soundtrack to their shopping experience. They'd speed up for the checkout line and slow down for browsing. The shopper said it felt like they were in a weird movie they didn't sign up for. Story 78. A hotel guest claimed the concierge insisted on writing their itinerary in calligraphy. Even when guests just wanted directions to a museum, he'd sit them down, pull out a fountain pen, and spend several minutes crafting an ornate scroll. It looked beautiful, but guests were frustrated by the wait. He argued it made the hotel feel more elegant, but most visitors just wanted a quick map. Story 79. A farmer's market customer said our honey vendor was wearing a full beekeeper suit in 90-degree heat. He wasn't tending bees, just selling jars of honey, but he'd waddle around in the heavy suit, explaining that it added authenticity. The problem was that he dripped sweat onto the sample table, and people were more worried about him fainting than buying his honey. Story 80. We had a complaint from a movie theater patron that our usher announced spoiler alerts before every film, then gave the spoiler anyway. He'd stand at the front and say, "If you don't want to know how this ends, cover your ears," before blurting out key plot points. He insisted it was better to prepare people, but ruined multiple films in a single weekend before management pulled him off the schedule.